Oftentimes we have this habit of thinking with, forgive me, YouTube, our dicks. And
Mhm. We aren't monetized on this one anyway, so don't worry about
Yeah.
okay,
it.
great.
A lot of the education seems to focus when it comes to those things like, oh, use condoms. This is here's STDs and blah 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 and prevent pregnancy and stuff. But there's more to that. It's the interactions, your psychology when you're physically involved with another person, that they don't give any tools for it. Like everybody goes in not even being able to comprehend that.
I actually think earlier than fourth grade might be a good time to start introducing the premise, just because of um, pedophiles and predators and stuff like that. Like, make children aware that there's this thing that they don't really fully understand yet, but it could really fuck up their entire lives and their entire mentality if they don't know how to, like, either put a stop to it or tell someone how to put a stop to it from happening any further. And
That's actually, a really good point too. Like that because there's plenty of kids who've experienced something like that.
And we went into Alexanderplatz, and by the stoplight, there was this apartment building right in front. About on the fourth or fifth floor, I think, there were these two men, totally naked, in on the balcony, making out and groping and stuff. And I'm like, you do you.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, one of the most amazing things I've seen in my life.
you start introducing the idea that Uncle No Pockets could be somebody you never talk to again, and it really complicates Christmas, right?
Something. It should be a requirement. This is the primary kind of thing, right up there with all the other stuff that they think are so important, like the
taxes,
stuff.
Balancing a checkbook.
Oh, don't get me started on fucking home ec.
Yeah,
like they don't teach.
In a world where kitchen sink microscopy has just begun, I am your host, Casey Rochford. Like, share, and subscribe. Coming soon to a theater near you.
Well, that's quite the introduction, Casey. So I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and Casey and I, we write our own music, and there's probably at the end of this episode, there might be a new song, one that you haven't heard before, or maybe one you haven't heard in a while. So yeah. Anyway, what do you want to talk about today, Casey? Oh, go ahead and introduce we have a guest too.
Yeah.
Where?
Oh, I think he's in the Starbase right now.
Oh, I'm one of those guys back there.
Yes, our
out of uniform though.
Longtime guest Randy Jones
on shore leave. Hello, folks.
Casual Friday.
Yep.
Sunday.
So I thought we would kind of discuss a topic that Randy might be able to help out with, having a young daughter, and me now having a teenage stepdaughter, and Eric having possibly kids he doesn't know about somewhere out there. What do we all think about how sex education is handled?
Yeah, that's a very good topic, and I think one that divides a lot of people. Everybody's kind of got their own sort of angle on it and what they think is the right way and the wrong way and stuff like that. And gets people whipped up.
Yeah, there's the camp that likes would rather the parents just handle it, and then there's the camp that just wants to let the schools do it.
I'll just throw, my 2 cents in at the beginning. Like, I think, I don't know. I don't understand why this particular topic is one that, or, this sex education is something that is specifically separate than other forms of education. Like, people get all like, oh no, the parents need to be the ones teaching, but like, do the parents even know themselves? And like, maybe, I don't know. Why this particular thing, and not like say, oh well, the parents ought to be the ones teaching their kids about mathematics, not the school system, or history or something. Like, why is this one special? I don't understand. And I think, personally, I think it's like, kids should be taught everything, honestly, like, just, hi Floyd, yes. But I think, I don't see a reason to kind of sugarcoat things and kind of keep it on the DL until they're adults or something, because I think that's kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think honesty, just real, like, be real when you're teaching kids. That's I don't yeah, I guess my personal view is like, we shouldn't avoid that subject, and I think we should just be honest about it. I think, like, just tell, just like the whole like drug education thing, like, oh, back in the day it was the whole just say no kind of thing, and they're like, oh well, we should just teach abstinence, as if that's like, oh okay, that's all you got to say and everything's fine, right? Well, it won't be fine. Because
Right.
kids come in not knowing anything, and I think we should just teach them everything. I don't know.
So let's get some context here and build some content for the show a bit. So you probably know, Casey probably knows. So when we were kids, our first exposure to the films was
Right.
probably in fourth grade.
Yep.
And I remember being in a classroom with only the boys,
Mhm.
watching these 1950s era films about, okay, here are these body parts. Here's kind of what they do, and abstinence, and nothing about how you put A into B. Just here, you go like this, and then the girls' parts do that, and nothing about how conception works, and that whole thing. And and I think there was a video about don't cuddle, and don't pet, and don't touch, and just don't nothing. And it was really like we were more confused about the whole thing. And it wasn't until high school I figured out where this thing is supposed to go into that thing, from hearing stories from people who have actually done that. And I never, okay, don't tell my wife, I never lost my virginity until 2001,
Mhm.
because I was with a girl who was Christian, was like, nope, that's not happening until we're married. And I'm like, uh, eh. It's a
Well,
side story.
my
But this transcends so many things. It's like, there's religion, there's, education, and then now schools want kids to learn about this stuff way before fourth grade. My daughter has not yet. She's in first grade. She'll be in second grade next year. So far, we have not gotten the letter. So she has not learned about that.
and
Which
I think you're like, fourth grade ish might be a good kind of starting point. but I
But
had
not
a
with
similar
1950. No,
no,
not with
yeah.
1950 videos.
I had a very similar experience, like the actual
Yeah.
film reel that they'd play, and it was very old and outdated
Mhm.
and very matter of fact. And it's like, okay, and that's fine. Maybe that's what you should see when you're young. Like you learn the matter of fact things and stuff. But then I think kids should be given tools to help understand their biology and their psychology. Because I mean, as you go through puberty, it's confusing. You don't know what's going on, you know, and just like the whole drug education, where it's like, oh, just say no. There we go. You know, done and dusted. Like that's it. We don't need to do anything else. Well, no, you do, because people, you know, they're going in ignorant about all this stuff, and I think,
Yeah.
you know, we need to be more comprehensive in education as far as I'm concerned. Like, but I think it should be kind of a progressive sort of uh system of learning, where, you know, maybe you don't want to take your fourth graders and make them watch all the videos and give them all the information. It's probably a little overwhelming and probably not really relevant. Like,
And giving condoms.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, maybe in high school, like late middle school, high school, that kind of era is about when I think that actually in middle school, generally, like you hit like 12, 13, and your hormones start activating, and
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah,
the
pretty
time
much
where
whenever it becomes possible is when you should start introducing that stuff.
Yeah.
Rather than like pretend there's some way to prevent it from happening, you have to just kind of assume the worst.
Mhm.
And my parents never had the conversation with me. Never, ever. So mom or dad didn't sit down with me and say, "Hey, birds and the bees, here's how this works."
Mhm.
So that's another reason why it's like, I don't know what this goes into.
Well,
it
Oh,
has to happen somewhere, right? Like,
well,
so the schools.
and this is something that I think, like, you know, we spend so much effort and so many resources on teaching academic things like mathematics and
yeah.
history and things like that, the things that don't really necessarily translate into something you have to deal with as an adult. Maybe, possibly, like, I mean, maybe algebra might be a thing, but maybe not. But everybody deals with their own biology and sexuality and things like that. It's something every single person has to deal with, and to kind of dismiss it and just be like, yeah, we'll here, watch this old ass video, and, you know, or film, and things will be good. I think that does everybody a disservice, because yeah, kids are going to get to that point and they're going to start experimenting, and if we don't give them the tools to comprehend what that's all about, well, we're going to have problems, and we do have problems. Like, people don't know anything, you know, they
Right.
and you know, it's there's the side of sexuality and how you interact with people in that regard, and you know, not just, you know, because a lot of the education seems to focus when it comes to those things, like, oh, you know, use condoms, this is here's STDs and blah blah blah, and prevent pregnancy and stuff, but there's more to that. It's the interactions, your psychology when you're physically involved with another person, that they don't give any tools for. Like, everybody goes in not even being able to comprehend that, and like, that's the stuff that we should be teaching as well.
This
Like,
goes back to like 1950s duck and cover films, you know, basically like,
mhm.
oh, problem comes along, duck and cover. Sex, abstinence.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so I had this thought briefly here. Maybe there should be a class in like late elementary or something. And it's actually a class where kids can learn a little bit about feeling, psychology, sexuality, because back in the day, those films were very black and white. So you're a man, you're a woman, and that's how it works. It's
Mhm.
not like you're a man who likes guys, you're a woman who likes ladies, you're a man who wants to be a woman, or you're a woman who wants to be a man, or you're somebody who wants to be just like David Bowie in the 70s, you know, so not to, diss on him. I love his music.
Oh my
And
God, Bowie is a
Yeah.
legend.
yeah, and
Well,
his
no,
passing hit me. Yeah,
you bring up a really good point, and that's kind of what I was getting at, is that there's more
sure. Yeah.
than just simply the biological or physiological aspect of, oh, this goes in here and that, and here's what you should do. There's more to it, like relationships and things,
Oh,
and
right. Yeah, yeah.
trying to comprehend your
Partnerships,
place. Yeah, exactly.
just
In
life
dealing,
lessons.
well,
You know.
and I think everybody, in some form or another, there's the concept of normal, but I don't think when it comes to human sexuality there is such a thing as normal. Even in like a man and woman kind of relationship, there's deviant sides to everybody, and people think of it as taboo, like, oh, ooh, that's, you don't talk about that, but it's like, well, maybe we should, because maybe people who are a little bit different, might feel out of place or like there's something wrong with them, when really there isn't anything wrong. That's just who you are.
I
So
had that experience. Yeah. So a good friend of mine, actually one of my best friends, um, white guy, gay, no name because of the video.
mhm.
Known him for years. Uh, lives alone and just can't find the right partner for his situation. So some people aren't set up to navigate that river of relationships, I think, uh, due to this education. Now, another friend, um, big giant black guy, not going to mention his name, he's straight. He's in a relationship with a woman who has come out as non-binary. And so he has to deal with the pronouns like they and them and whatnot. And they're doing their things together just fine. There's no real, I think, education about, relationships
Well,
either out there.
no, you're
How
right.
to deal with this kind of thing.
You're right, and that I think is kind of what I was getting at, is like that there's more to sexuality, or like sex ed, I guess, than just the sex. Like, and I think exposing people to different ways of doing things would hopefully within a generation or two create a world that's a little more accepting of those differences.
Kind of like Europe.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I mean, me, I'm poly, so that's its own thing, which there's no handbook. Well, I mean, there are sort of handbooks for that, but they don't teach about that in school, like how to deal with that. And
Yeah.
that's something you kind of have to figure out yourself. How do you deal with these feelings and stuff, like navigating those kinds of relationships? And I think it applies to all relationships, really, that there are strong feelings that people have, and that's not really taught to anybody. Like, they don't teach that, and I think that's super important.
I have a fun story for Casey, and then maybe we can let him talk after this
Oh yeah.
because he's been quiet. Um, I was on a double-decker tour bus in Berlin. Those red things that go around every like 10 minutes and do the whole loop and whatnot. And we went into Alexanderplatz, and by the stoplight, there was this apartment building right in front. About on the fourth or fifth floor, I think, there were these two men, totally naked, and on the balcony, making out and groping and stuff. And I'm like, you do you.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, one of the most amazing things I've seen in my life. And I'm like, it's Europe and
Well,
great.
it should be like that
Yeah.
everywhere, honestly. And you're expressing yourself, your sexuality. I don't see a problem with public nudity or anything. Like, I mean, it's a body. We all have the same stuff under our clothing. Like, why should we be ashamed of that and cover it up? Why is that a big issue?
That's actually part of what prompted me to think of this topic. Is now living in Germany, there is all kinds of casual nudity. It's totally okay. Like we went to
Different.
we went to these like saltwater pools to just kind of like chill and relax for a day, and there was like a naked part, but there was just like a total window, like you could just see in there, and there's even like those sky car things that just like kind of start right above the bathhouse place. So like people are just like floating above you, not very far up, and looking down at all these naked bodies and stuff. And like nobody gives a shit because they shouldn't give a shit. But in America, like we get this brainwashed mentality that we should give a shit for some reason.
Well, it's like this latent Puritanism or something like that from back in the day that we're still.
And of the three of us, I'm the one that had a Catholic school sex education. So,
oh boy,
let me tell you about that. I think mine started in the 6th grade, and of course there was a lot of talk about like, this is what masturbation is. Don't do that. And of course, what do you want to do? Oh, yeah, I've never heard of this before. This sounds great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thanks like, for the tip, basically.
Yeah, right? It's like why are we waiting that long to like learn about our own bodies? I actually think earlier than 4th grade might be a good time to start introducing the premise, just because of pedophiles and predators and stuff like that. Like make children aware that there's this thing that they don't really fully understand yet, but it could really fuck up their entire lives and their entire mentality if they don't know how to like either put a stop to it or tell someone how to put a stop to it from happening any further. And
that's actually, a really good point too. Like because there's plenty of kids who've experienced something like that, and they don't want to come out and talk about it because, again, sex is shameful, and you can't be honest about it when you really should be. Like, hey,
and there doesn't even have to be a sex discussion, just like a consent discussion. Parts of your body and what is generally accepted as like super personal, and what's like, a tap on the shoulder, okay, that's fine, but
or like your grandma hugs you or something, like, okay, well, that's okay. But that is sort of a nebulous kind of thing that might be difficult to comprehend for kids, but I agree. I think that starting early is good, and maybe starting
have you ever had something that was difficult to comprehend, but once you came across it in life, you're like, that makes sense now. I remember that, like, so even if it doesn't really make sense at the time, it's kind of seeded, and it can come in handy if and when it needs to.
Sure. And certainly for young kids that aren't necessarily able to comprehend things in a deep way like adults presumably can do, I think like safety is important, and early on, maybe like Casey, like you're saying, talk about the fact that there are some adults that might be a risk, and here's how to avoid it, here's how to recognize things, and maybe a little bit of practice and how to get yourself out of a situation, or even talk about something if you couldn't get out of a situation. I think that's really important.
Don't talk to strangers. That whole thing.
Yeah. But that
guy comes up in a van. Maybe his name's Casey. He's got this van going around town. On the side, it's spray painted free candy. Like, hey kids, free candy.
Yeah. Well, and that is a very real scenario, but not all of the scenarios are so obvious. There's a lot more subtle things. It could be a family member. In fact, it more often is like the uncle or something like that. And how do you navigate that? Teaching kids how to deal with things like that, how to say no, how to recognize when things have gone a little too far. And
yeah, and that introduces
grooming
the
and
difficult
stuff.
topic of
grooming,
but,
yeah.
Mhm.
But the difficult topic of like loyalty to family,
Yeah.
like you start introducing the idea that Uncle No Pockets could be somebody you never talk to again, and it really complicates Christmas, right?
Yeah.
For sure. Well, and maybe if kids had these tools in their toolbox, then those kinds of family conflicts might be avoided. Because obviously, like if something actually happens, then of course this conflict is going to occur. But if something almost happened, it could be a better situation. Um, you know, just saying. So maybe having some of that knowledge and the ability to deal with those situations might benefit everybody, I guess, in that regard.
Grooming is a good thing to bring up because I don't think that's ever, like, I've never even heard of that until recently, like a few years ago, actually. And I kind of came across it, but because it sort of happened to me, like as an adult.
Huh?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So I haven't talked about it a whole lot because there was a bit of a legal issue going on for a while, but it's in the clear now. I met this girl on a dating app, and
Really? Wow.
I being yeah, right.
In this day and age.
I being an open book, I put out there like, hey, if you want to get to know me, here's my show, Kitchen Sink My Crossbeat. You can like watch me talking to one of my best friends, and it's totally just like me, totally raw. Like you get my opinions and find out if you hate me or you like me. She just kind of binge watched the show and downloaded a whole lot of information about me. And then comes at me like making herself out to be like my perfect partner, right? And totally doesn't even occur to me that she could just be riffing off of, like profiling me from the show.
Yeah.
Which she was. And like she laid it on thick, and she had two boys, 16 and 12 at the time. And she got them calling me dad like a few days after they met me, which was a few weeks after I met her. And it totally somehow worked on me. Like I was really in. And then, like I'll make a long story short, it went all kinds of sideways from there. And then she took me to court to get a restraining order and created all these crazy, wacky stories that it's a whole other episode.
Oh, well, yeah, we could do an episode about gaslighting too. But
well, yeah,
I mean, basically, it sounds like she was a con artist. And in a way that ties into the whole like grooming with adults and kids and stuff like that. You're essentially conning them to be able to do something, whatever it might be. And
like her payoff was that I kind of helped her get through like another legal thing that she was dealing with, like all the stress of it and stuff. And then when she flipped a legal thing on me, she found a new target. Yeah, so that's kind of her thing.
Oh boy.
She is one to be avoided. So if anyone wants to private message me about who to avoid on a dating app, I'd be happy.
Well, I'm married, so I'm good. Let me grab some water, keep bantering.
Okay.
I'll
right.
join back in 1 second.
Sure.
And I am glad to be married too, because that was something that really screwed me up. Like I didn't know if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. And
yeah,
I'm so lucky to have come out the other side of that, like somewhat healthy. In fact, I don't even know that I could say I'm healthy. I've actually kind of blocked a lot of that stuff from my memory. Like
I don't
someone
know
will
if
be
that's...
like, "Oh, didn't you date someone with kids? Young kids?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess I did, huh?" Like, like it takes a second for me to like register.
And maybe that's certainly in the short term a good coping mechanism to deal with that kind of like pain, but also at the same time these experiences, it's like combat. or something where, you know, yeah, it really sucks, but now you've learned something else. You're better for it if you are willing to accept the knowledge and the wisdom. Like all of my experiences, I've had some shit shows too. I mean, the the girl, remember when we were running the business, Casey, like
Yeah.
the
Boy.
psycho, yeah, like who left my house in a cop car.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But you know, it's
There's
like I feel bad that I wasted some time on that, but I also don't regret that. Like I think that I'm better for it now. That like maybe I was a little too naive back then, and now I can recognize the signs of potential issues in advance, like
yeah.
the red flags and stuff that like were not really flying when I was younger.
I tend to have that same philosophy where I try not to regret things because they make me who I am now and all of that. But that was like, I mean, people throw around the word PTSD a lot, but I'm pretty sure I've got it because I still can't really talk about like the impact what she does has on her kids without crying like uncontrollably.
Yeah.
It's just heartbreaking to think about like a 12-year-old being in that kind of
being a
home
pawn
environment.
in somebody's game,
Yeah,
essentially.
like that.
But you know what?
No.
The thing is, you can't really lament things that you can't really change. It's I mean, yes, it'd be nice to be able to fix that and make it better, but at what cost?
Yeah,
And
I mean, I tried. CPS didn't care.
that's typical in this state.
Yeah.
But I mean, what you did what you could, and that's the best that you can have, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
just at least appreciate that attempt and move on, I guess. Yeah. Oh wow, this is getting deep.
Yeah.
It's getting all over the place.
Yeah. Well, it still ties into everything because these experiences that we have as adults that come from a position of ignorance, right? We got ourselves into a situation because we didn't know any better, and
Yeah.
and so this is the thing. Like, I feel like, and maybe we shouldn't even call it sex ed. It should be more like life ed or something. Like,
Yeah.
how to deal with yourself.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
You know, how to deal
But
with
I mean,
yourself
it's all
and
tied
people.
together, though. You know, like
Yeah,
it is.
grooming uses sex as a weapon, basically,
Well,
or a tool.
Well, in I guess my vision for this kind of course or class, I guess it would be like sex ed would be a component of it, but not like the only thing. There should be a lot more. Like, how do you deal with yourself growing up and dealing with your interactions with other people, and how to handle the emotions that you have, and conflict resolution and things like that, and how to recognize warning signs of potential risks.
Not just emotions, but I mean, you know, okay, so we're three guys, and so there's a girl, she's cute, whatever, or there's, you know, we have had a few drinks, and she's like, you know, whatever. Oftentimes we have this habit of thinking with, forgive me, YouTube, our dicks. And
we aren't monetized on this one anyway, so don't worry about it.
Yeah.
okay, great.
You can
So,
say whatever the fuck you want.
Okay, well, great. Let me get my other uniform on. By the way, you like bluer?
Yeah, shore leaves over, huh?
Yeah.
So, all throughout this damn thing out, all throughout like high school, college, and whatnot, you know, going through puberty and growing up and getting older and having kind of shoddy sex ed education to kind of explain, okay, this body part does this and this body part bleeds, and nothing about how it works. You know, like, girl over there, great, cute. I'm gonna write you a letter. Here's a letter. Like me, please. And if not, then okay, girl there. Here's a letter. I was an awkward kid. I was very an awkward kid when it came to that. There was a girl in junior high I would write letters to literally every freaking day. Don't tell my wife. And eventually, after about half a year, she sent me one back and said, yeah, no, I'm good. And it turns out, so after years and years of being out of high school, I look her up and she's okay, I'm not going to say who she is or her ethnicity, but she's a Baptist Christian who's very religious. And my ex, before I went to college, was also very religious. And although we dated and didn't do anything, we just, sat down, watched movies. Her parents were always there and whatnot. I had no clue as to what to do. And of course, we would kiss once in a while, and I'd get this effect called blue balls, which I didn't really figure out why every time that I would leave, that I couldn't walk very well. Damn things
and
hurt so bad.
That's a thing that should be taught as well. I mean, that should be a
Yeah.
component of that. Like, I think a comprehensive understanding of your biology and your psychology is something that we should endow kids with. Like, give all these lessons to them, and not like just give them a cursory old 50s film and think like, oh, yep, that's good enough. Like, yeah, sure. Like, I survived. Well, maybe we don't need kids just simply surviving. Maybe they need to thrive, and you can do that when you know about things, when you have wisdom and knowledge about stuff. And that actually applies to the whole world, actually, your entirety of existence. Like, ignorance is the reason you struggle.
Right.
And you can see it in relationships. Like, in the US, what is it, like half of marriages end in divorce, something like that.
Something, yeah.
And that's just marriages. That's ignoring relationships. Like, how many relationships go sour?
Oh gosh.
Just in general.
Likely. Yeah.
And my exploration into polyamory and non-monogamy has taught me a lot. Like, my relationships now are so much deeper than they ever were. And like the problems that used to surface in monogamous relationships really don't. And it's just simply because of the perspective that I've gained from this experience. And I mean, I'm not saying everybody should explore polyamory, but I mean, maybe the lessons I've learned are things.
Although that's literally what you said in the last episode.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe yes. Maybe dip your toes into it. I think it's healthy, and even then too. Any kind of sexuality, right? Like, maybe you are actually gay and you don't know it, and society is telling you, well, if you're a man, you're with a woman, or if you're a woman, you're with a man, that kind of thing. And maybe that's not who you are. And so experimenting a little bit, I think, is healthy, just to find out who you are. And I don't see a problem with it, but society generally does.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit more than like trying broccoli if you don't think you like broccoli, but I mean, like I'm pretty sure I'm straight even without like having to try it, because I feel like that's something that happens before there's even a physical connection with a person, right? Like the spark has to be there to begin with.
Sure. Yeah, you generally, like, you'll probably start picking that up.
Yeah, that said, there can be gradients, right? Like, you can be a little gay sometimes, like
Yeah.
that does happen with people. So like,
You
like
buy,
bisexuality. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and in fact, I would almost say that 100% of people are bisexual. It's just a matter of like how bisexual you are. Like,
Yeah.
there's people that are way far on one end where like anything goes, and then there's people way on the other end where it's like, oh no, that disgusts me. But you know, depending on the circumstance, you might do something once or twice or something.
how desperate are you to get your rocks off?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yep.
So,
How long is your prison sentence?
right, yeah. So when I was in kindergarten, there was this girl, no name, and I was nuts about her. And then we went through the same elementary school until the third grade. And in the third grade, her and I became really good friends. And I was nuts about her. Oh my gosh. Like I was like head over heels, like this is the one, you know. I was 9, right? Had no clue, no sex ed prior to that.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, she is mine. And we actually hung out and did things for um, months, with her mother and my mother and stuff, and playing or going places or having frozen yogurt or doing things and whatnot. And then she changed schools, and I was kind of, lost for a bit. And years later, turns out she became lesbian and got married.
Mhm.
And I'm like, cool, because I'm married too. And now I don't have to think about that anymore. I still have feelings, but nobody taught me how to deal with those feelings when I was that age. Because so my daughter and a really good best friend of mine has a kid. And so my daughter and they uh, play together about once or twice a week. And they have similar birth dates, so they're about the same age. And they fit together like this. It's
Mhm.
crazy.
Mhm.
And so I see that similarity with them that I saw when I was a kid with this girl. And so I don't have a problem later if they want to, do something, whatever, but they'll come in and they'll go into the room and play Barbies or toys or games or things or whatever. And they fit like this because they've been together ever since they were both infants.
Wow.
So it's almost like brother and sister. So I, again, I don't mind if they later in life, if they decide to, couple up or whatever else, but, you know, they're young. My daughter's 7. He's just turned 7. But these kids just, mesh. And it's, in my opinion, I think it's beautiful because they can just get along so freaking well. It's almost like, the perfect person to meet the other perfect person and coming together and just like being perfect. So
There are love stories like that.
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Actually, that makes me think, because you had mentioned, Randy, before, about like this is the one, and maybe this is a good time to ask the question: do you think there's such a thing as a soulmate or the one, right, out there, or is it maybe more broad than that?
Well, so I'll tell you a story. and see if this works. Back in 2002, I went to Japan for the first time, flying Northwest Airlines. And I went back to visit some students who I mentored in college who were going to graduate. And so I went to their ceremony and basically hung out with them for the whole time. On the way back to the States, again, Northwest, I was the last person on the plane because one of the students made me take like 5 tequila shots before I got on board. I'm like, oh shit. And so I'm the last person on the plane, get on there. And didn't know this until 2 days later. Fly back, get to SeaTac, go home, sleep a night, then back to Ellensburg for college. Now, on that same plane, as I learned a day later, was my wife sitting 2 rows behind me, going to the same town, Ellensburg, the same college, Central, the same dorm, Quigley, the same floor, Third, and next door.
Wow. That's very coincidental, I suppose.
Yeah, and then so I get a knock on my door. It's like, can you help me with my internet card? You know, 2002. So, back then we had these laptops with these cards you had to slide in, plug in, and do things with and whatnot. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll help you with your card and come over and do that. And 2 weeks later, oh, like this. And since then, so we got married in 2004 in Japan. I've got pictures of me looking like Tom Cruise from Last Samurai in the black thing, and she's in like kimono and whatnot, and that's it. So I guess it can happen.
Yeah.
We've had issues over the years, but we're still married since then, and I don't seek out other things. I'm a guy who's like, give me one thing, I'll try to do it well, and just stay the course. So that's
Yeah.
me.
It sounds like you basically met the perfect person in that regard.
And
Yeah,
most
that's a cool story. Like
Yeah.
one of those 1 in a million, like same place, same time sort of things.
It's like buying that scratch card at 7-Eleven and scratching it off and like, oh, Japanese wife.
Yeah, like I have a pretty similar story with my now 3rd wife. So I'm a marriage expert here.
Or
cool.
maybe not.
And I can tell you, like, getting along doesn't necessarily mean that you're made for each other, because I never had a single fight with my 2nd wife. We were married a pretty long time, but it wasn't right.
Yeah.
Like, and it has to, you have to have that feeling like inside, and it doesn't always necessarily maybe present itself in such a 1 in a million way. But for me, it was like I went to see this band that had reunited, Stabbing Westward, back in 2017 in Seattle, and they were like one of my favorite bands growing up. They were the first CD I bought and everything. I even went and met the singer that night and totally had this like fanboy moment and everything, and took a picture with him. And then, 2022, they come back to town. I was like, oh, I'll go see him again. And I was all excited for the show. So I put that profile picture up with me and the singer, and like a few days before the show. And then like 2 days before they were in Seattle, they had played a show in Belgium. And so I was on the Facebook page and I commented on it. I was like, see you in Seattle in a few days. And the day after the show, I get this message on Facebook from this random girl, and she's like, how was the show? And I started talking to her, and it turns out she's from Germany. And I was like, because I was like, oh, were you not able to come to the show? And she's like, nah, it's kind of hard to cross the ocean sometimes. And and she was supposed to be able to go to this Belgium show. It's like 2 hours away, but she had gotten COVID and couldn't make it, and she was really bummed, and she wanted to hear about some of the shows, and not everybody was like responding. So she just like randomly reached out to me because she saw that comment and saw my profile picture, and it's like, oh, this must be like pretty diehard fan too. And we kind of bonded on that. Come to find out, she was at that Seattle show in 2017, and we just didn't cross paths then.
Oh my gosh.
See, that's very similar to Randy's story too.
Yeah.
Like
5 years in the making, though.
Man, that's wild.
Think of all the bullshit I would have missed. Oh.
Well, maybe you found the right person, and I did too. And I mean, gosh, she's put up with me and my bullshit for years. So here.
Yeah, she saw you through sobriety, huh?
Yeah, went through that whole thing and got sober, and oh, what a trip. We can do a show about that at some point too, if you want to.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
Might help some folks.
Yeah,
definitely.
And do a show about aging, because I'm balding up here, like, losing hair, and
Cry Me a River.
That.
Oh yeah, Casey. Well, actually, see, and this actually ties back into the whole like life education kind of thing that I'm thinking about.
There we go.
That like, yeah, how you deal with things when you're young and growing up and dealing with all the hormones and changes in your body and experiences and discovering who you are, and then eventually you do, and then you get older and older and wiser, hopefully, and then how to deal with aging and death and stuff. I mean, not only your own mortality, but your friends. When we're young,
Parents.
we your parents and stuff. When we're young, we think, oh, I'm going to live forever, and
right,
nothing. I'll be here forever. And I remember in middle school, one of my sort of friends, Troy, he died, just had like a massive heart attack and died. And I think that was like 7th grade or something like that. And everybody in the school went to the funeral, and it was really sad and stuff. And it's like, that kind of hit home, like, oh
yeah,
wow, even at that age, you aren't going to be here forever. And that stuck with me. But not everybody has that experience. And you get old and dealing with like all the other changes in your body, gray hair, you start losing your hair, you get weaker, and things start falling apart and stuff.
Things, yeah.
You get sick and stuff, and your friends are dying, your parents are dying, that kind of thing. And how do you deal with that? And that's something, again, that we're never taught. We just have to figure it out as we go. And
health class that they offer in high school sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Totally sucks.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
I don't think they really talked about anything health related, did they?
No, they didn't. It was like drugs are bad, and do this worksheet, and oh, it's 9 a.m. So do the pledge, and then
Yeah, I had a couple of health classes, and I don't even remember that it. I don't remember anything from them. Like I don't even remember what they
I
covered.
don't either.
I
Was it
remember
like
that's where they would plug in sex ed in later years.
yeah, yeah, you're right.
But
I think we did like a CPR thing or
oh
something.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, okay. There was that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
which I guess
Had
is
that too.
valuable, but like you
Yeah.
would think it could be a little more comprehensive.
But that's one of those things that you got to learn like every couple of years and get
Mhm.
like recertified and everything. So it's like,
Right. Yeah.
I, like I don't even think they certify you in school. They just teach you how to do it, which is
I
fine. Which is fine.
yeah,
Like,
well,
It's
you
just
should know. You should at
adults.
least yeah, at least
yeah,
having the knowledge, even if you suck at it because you've only done it the one time or something, it's better than nothing, right? At least you can try.
maybe. Yeah.
Well, but that's a thing that maybe I think this should be more comprehensive. In fact, I think it life the whole like life education sort of thing should be an ongoing thing that you throughout your time in
Oh yeah.
school.
Yeah.
It
I
should
tell you
always
the,
like it should be a requirement, not just a an elective or something. It should be a
the
requirement. This is the primary kind of thing, right up there with all the other stuff that they think are so important, like the academic
taxes,
stuff.
balancing a checkbook, blah blah blah.
Oh, don't get me started on fucking home ec.
Yeah.
Like they don't teach you anything. Like, oh
Home
my
ec
god,
sucks.
yeah.
We
Like
made
if
we
I
made cupcakes and sewed this little thing together,
yep,
and that was it.
same here.
Yeah.
Well, popcorn that was our thing. Lots of popcorn.
We made a pizza, but mine was more like a giant cookie.
Yeah,
and then
as
I
a-
turned into a chef for like 10
Yeah.
years, you know.
well, as a class, we all made one cake together, from like a box mix or something like that. But you would think home
True
economics,
baking.
right?
Yeah.
You would learn about budgeting and dealing with money and stuff like that. And that's another thing that like they don't really prepare anybody for how you deal with your home economics,
Mhm.
your cash flow and bills and how to budget for things and how to deal with credit and banks and all that. Like they
We
don't
don't
teach any of that
know
shit.
nothing about
No,
that.
but it's again just like biology, your own human biology. It's something everybody has to deal with in most societies. Is home economics, like you how to pay for your household and stuff like that, and they don't teach shit. Like people come out
Right.
completely dumb,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they like, oh yeah, well, I guess we've again like sex ed, like oh we've done our part. You're good to go in life.
Mission
Like, no, you're not.
accomplished.
Yeah,
Here's
mission
the thing.
accomplished.
Here's
Whoa.
that thing.
Yeah,
Who knows?
You know,
exactly.
the death thing is super important. Like in school, they really need to be teaching you about like setting up a living will and talking to your parents about the end of their life and stuff.
Yes.
Like
yes.
they have a
yes.
talk with you about sex, you need to have a talk with them about death. Like
Sure. Not
it
only
is
that,
it's such a mess if you don't do that stuff ahead of time.
Which
like, it's so complicated.
nobody, they do not teach that in school. Like your average like K through 12,
No
they do not
class.
teach that at
Yeah.
all. And that's important, and that's more of like the mechanical side of things, I guess. But also the emotional side. How do you deal with death and loss? I mean, if
Someone died in our 7th grade class too. I remember that. There was like
Really?
there was an assembly about it right when we got back in 8th grade. It happened over the summer. He was in the special ed. He had a wheelchair and stuff.
Huh.
I
don't
forget his
recall.
name because I never actually knew him personally, but
Yeah. But
you know,
so-
like that stuff does happen. And somebody else we went to high or a middle school with died young because she had some weird like disorder.
the girl with leukemia.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was in the German class. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it's
but
like
yeah,
that's heavy stuff for kids.
So with
It is.
death, junior high, high school, great. It's probably a good time for that. But Casey, I know you have old folks who need some help, and my mom is going in for knee surgery to have it replaced, and my mother-in-law is getting ill, and so we should all learn how to deal with things at least on a basic level with death mentally and also with procedures like
Right.
Yeah.
what do you do when your parents die, you call this place, you do this thing,
And not only that, but your own self too. Because I mean, it's
yeah,
basically as soon as we're born, we're dying.
oh
And it's
gosh,
it's inevitable. We'll all die. Like, and that is something I think that's really, really important to for people to have at least like a cursory understanding of and preparedness for. But that again isn't taught. And it's just kind of like, well, I guess they'll figure it out. Like, well, this is, I mean, of all the things we should be teaching people, things that everybody deals with are things that probably should be taught.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
yet they're
right,
not. Like, they focus on academia so much and kind of ignore all of the things that really actually matter in the world. Like, you may or may not use geometry or algebra or something like that, or have to remember historical figures in the past. That probably doesn't necessarily matter for most people, but everybody's going to die. Everybody's probably going to get sick at some point. Everybody has to deal with budgeting. Everybody has sex. They're going to have to come to
Hopefully.
terms with that. Well, yeah, hopefully, yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, or at least masturbates. Like, there's that. I mean, that's part of it too. It's part of your sexuality. And so I think kids should have an understanding of those things. And well, even then, like, it's kind of annoying because I see things like wood shop and auto shop being closed in schools, and maybe
Right, yeah.
wood shop may not necessarily be the biggest deal, but maybe it is, because it's like how to make things work with your hands, how to plan, that kind of thing. That's kind of important. And then auto shop, though, I think everybody should take auto shop, because everybody's going to have to deal. Maybe you don't buy a car necessarily, but most people do. And having at least a little bit of understanding, well, even if you don't do the work yourself, at least knowing enough about how things work that you won't be conned by some bad auto shop that's trying to sell you something you don't need.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How to get yourself out of a sticky situation. Your car breaks down on the side of the freeway in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. What do you do?
Change a tire,
Yeah,
change
yeah,
your
basic
oil,
basic stuff.
simple things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tried to get into auto shop my freshman year, and it was totally full. And the following semester, not even the next year, they canceled it completely.
Oh,
Totally got rid of auto shop. I never learned how to work on a car. I never learned how to I didn't learn how to drive a stick until I was like 31. Like,
well, nowadays it's almost a lost art. In fact, there's
not in
kind
Europe.
of
You almost can't find an automatic in Europe.
yeah. Well, in the U.S., it's sort of a joke that's like the best theft deterrent is having a stick, a manual transmission car, because like the kids today don't know how to drive them.
I know. I tried to steal a manual transmission once when I didn't know how to drive one, and I drove it on the sidewalk in first gear. I didn't really steal it, but
Just took it for a short joyride, right?
Well, okay, here's what happened. Just for the sake of like legality, I was out having a smoke break at this restaurant I was working at, and the bar next door, some guy got into I think he was like there with a girl, and the girl's boyfriend showed up, and he wanted me to like get his car so the guy wouldn't see him. And I was like, yeah, okay. Like he gave me like $20 or something. So I go over there and I get in, and it's the stick shift, and I'm like, I don't know what to do here. And this like, so right next to Bellanina's, you know, that it's the loose wheel now. You know how small that parking lot is.
Oh yeah.
And imagine not knowing how to drive a stick, and you have to back a car out and drive it next door to Bellanina's. Well, like there was that stupid light they put right there. And so I wasn't about to like go out into the street, wait for a light, and then go back into Bellanina's. So I just drove it on the sidewalk in first gear because that was all I could manage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Breaking the law.
Oh man.
So, Casey, tell us a little bit about how that one time you and I went to that car dealership where your parents bought that new car, and we trashed their what was it? What do you call the damn thing? The place where you sit and get refreshments.
Oh, like the lobby or something?
Yeah, because you and I went in there and totally trashed that.
I don't even remember that.
Oh my gosh, we took like powdered creamer and sugar and dumped it all over the place. And we left, and then a sales guy went inside, and he saw us leaving. He's like, "What the fuck?"
Oh my God.
I wish I could do that with all my car dealers I deal with.
That's what you call karma. Huh?
Karma, yeah.
Oh man. Well, I think we're this is probably a good point to wrap things up. I think we covered a lot, honestly.
It's been a while
Yeah.
since I've interjected a dad joke too.
Yep. Oh man.
Well,
Yeah,
we've
this is
covered sex, money, and death. I don't think it gets any better than that.
Wow.
That's
That
life.
warrant- that warrants
Sex,
a rating.
money, and death.
And pretty
Our
much.
rating.
Well, don't forget taxes.
Oh,
Well, that's
yeah.
money too, I guess, but you know.
Well, yeah, but
And that's
Can't have
another
money
thing
without
that isn't-
taxes.
like taxes is not really talked about in home ec too, you know.
Yeah.
no,
People
it's
don't
not.
understand any of
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody knows anything. Like it's like what are they doing? Like, oh yeah, education like that.
Or the
in
fact that
itself.
if you repeatedly tax the same physical dollar over and over again, eventually you're just going to run out of money.
yeah, every time if we just handed that money back and forth and paid tax on it, like eventually it would be 1 penny and we'd be like, oh,
Right.
what the hell? Oh man. Oh,
So
that's
many
a
episodes.
whole nother episode, honestly. We could go on about that. But I think, I'd like to hear what people have to say about just sex ed or life ed in general. Like, do you think things are being, you think it's adequate? What we currently do, or better ways of doing things? What should be added or omitted from sex ed, and that kind of thing? Do you think it's
Should we actually be allowed to have sex for sex ed?
I
So
would.
here's your homework.
Oh,
I'll tell you what, when I was-
Go on Tinder and
when I was a hormonal middle schooler, I would have loved to see that. Oh man, sex ed would have been my favorite class at that point. Like to
Mary
see,
Kay Letourneau's like, oh, I'll teach that class.
hey, watching the teacher I had a crush on masturbate would have been amazing. Anyway, we're already
Definitely
demonetized.
demonetized.
Let's double demonetize it.
YouTube's like, you must pay us.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Nega monetized. Oh man. Well, yeah. So those that are still here watching, thanks for sticking it out to the end, and you'll be rewarded with a song.
Yeah, and
There we
thanks
go.
for deep sink diving with us.
And thanks, Randy, for coming on and contributing.
You're
You got to
welcome.
say something. Yeah.
Yeah. Glad to be here. It's been a while, and do it again.
Yeah, definitely. You're always welcome back on the show. Anytime. All right. Well, everybody, have a good day or night or whatever, wherever you are. And see you later.
Deepest of emotions, positive commotion.
Just walking down the street, throwing apple seeds into farmland and stuff, and all of a sudden, you got trees everywhere.
So despite being a biologist, I was never super interested in horticulture.
You can lead a horticulture, but you can't make her think.